Another Ethos Basics video. I was requested by a viewer of the channel to explain how you could possibly use either a rotary or the slider, which you can't see, which is below there, as a switch. So we could use this as our ignition switch. We could use this basically as anything. So it'll just basically set it so that anything below this value is off or 0, and anything above is 1. So without further ado, we're going to create a new logic switch. So we're going to go press the little aircraft button, second page, logic switch. And create a logic switch. So now this is a simple A is greater than X scenario. So we selected that. We normal or inverted. In this case it doesn't matter, we can change that later on to suit what we need. It's probably not going to matter though for most applications. So now source. In this case I'm going to use the example of this analog because this analog is visible the way I've cropped this in. If you'd use the slider down the bottom, which I'm using now, it works the same thing. The slider down the bottom is listed as pot 3. So anyway, I'm going to move the dial I want for the source and select it. So basically now, with the value set at 0, which is neutral, so this can be a negative value or a positive value. For the sake of a switch, we want that to be 0 because that's the center point. So if we look up the top of the screen here, as I move it past halfway, we get a active condition, below an inactive condition. Neutral, it stays inactive, but we should always be assuming that we're going to be using it either fully one way or fully the other way. I personally use this as my ignition kill switch on my gas models, as I find I'm less likely to bump that than I am to bump a switch somewhere. You know, you always hear the story of someone accidentally bumping their ignition switch and killing the plane, killing the plane's engine, which can kill the plane. So we can see here we've now made logic switch 1, which summary is on or off. So let's look at a couple of ways we could use that. We press the model, we're going to go to mixers. Now in this case let's look at our throttle. So this is on an electric model. So in this model we have a throttle cut, which is a safety switch at the back there, as you normally do it. But say we do want it to be on this rotary. Well, simply we just select the active condition, and then we're going to select that first category. We're going to go to logic switches. Okay, and select logic switch 1, which should mean, well, it looked a bit strange to me. There might be a little bug there, or maybe it's just because we've only got one. So in this case, if we move that to the right, logic switches high, that means switch is off, switch is on I should say, the throttle cut is on. Move it to the left, throttle cut is off. So that's essentially the principle there that is going to work for a throttle cut on an electric model. Now let's hypothetically say we're actually dealing with a model where you want an ignition switch to work like this. Well, it's effectively the same thing. Source, in this new free mix I've created, I'm going to select logic switches. Again, it's not letting us select one because we've only made one. So it's going to be 1. That's why the listing here is for logic switch 1, logic switch 1, etc. So now we've set our source. So now this isn't anything currently, but you can see on this slider here, the orange line is either going high or low. There's no in between. And again, this is perfect for an ignition switch, you know, a power box switch, a boomer switch, all these kinds of things, because they just want to see the minimum value or the maximum value. So once we've given it, the source has been assigned, we're going to go down the bottom and we're going to set our output. So in this case, this is a friend who was using this radio's model. Let's just put it to channel 10. Copy the name, that's fine. And so now we can basically see on our output, we'll confirm that by looking at the outputs page just to make it extra clear, channel 10. If I'm below, we've got a negative 100. If I'm above, we've got a positive 100. And this is basically it. This is how we use a rotary as a switch. We could get more complicated by this and segment it if you wanted to, using those logic switches, but I think that's definitely outside of the scope of this video. So I'm thinking just to include in this video, for the sake of it, to show how we could use that to also give us an audio warning. So we're going to go, let's go back out from the start, select a little airplane. I'm going to go across to special functions. Haven't created any, let's create one. So now in this case, we're going to select our action, which is the top column. Now we're going to want to play a track here, because we want it to play engine armed, for example. We're going to want to enable this one because we want this logic switch to do something. Disable is something you're working on and you maybe don't want it to be functional until it's completed. Active condition, always on, that's correct, don't need to change it. So, file. I don't have any files on this because the SD card isn't on correctly, but basically we just pick the file we want and then that would play when this becomes active. Ah, I'm a bit wrong there. I've really done quite poorly there. So the active condition is going to be the logic switch. I'm a bit backwards on this. So logic switch 1. So as we can see, the logic switch is either on or off. I probably shouldn't have used my backup radio just because I don't have audio files on it at the moment. I think due to, I don't actually remember why I don't, but it's not something that's bothered me because I just use this for the flight sim or for buddy boxing. But effectively we can now use that to play a track. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. I hope these, my absence of doing these informal videos has been accepted. I've been a bit slack. I sort of get waves of motivation to make these, and unfortunately there's gaps between those waves. Anyway, this has been helpful. Please share it, and thank you for watching.